Does she keep making those horrible noises?
I don't know.
What's up with her eyes? Of her eyes. For God's sake, what happened to her eyes?
Greetings, children of the screen. Your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here, and I am joined by
Taylor.
And welcome to Evil Dead October, where we're going to be looking at Evil Dead all this month, the movies. At least the 3 movies. We're still debating on if we're going to do the remake. Let us know in the comments below if you want to see the remake. So yeah, we watched Evil Dead. Taylor's never seen it before.
Nope.
Never.
No, I have not.
And Evil Dead is a movie that everyone should see. If my grandmother were to ask me, is there one movie I should see before I die? I would tell her Evil Dead. She would hate it, but she would have fucking seen it. And that's the point. Taylor, what were your general thoughts on the movie we just watched, briefly?
What the fuck?
What the fuck? I have to admit, that was also my first reaction when I saw Evil Dead. Mind you, I first saw it when I was 10. So, yeah. But anyway, guys, let's go ahead and dive into this thing and let you know exactly what we thought about Evil Dead, the good, the bad, and the other. Very much ugly in this case, man. Those deadites. That is not bangable. No. Evil Dead! With a gush of gore, Evil Dead came into the world in 1981. It was originally released as an NC-17 or unrated. It came in at 85 minutes and obviously is a horror movie that is written and directed by the absolutely awesome Sam Raimi. With a cast that includes Bruce Campbell, Aileen Sandweiss, Richard Manticore, Betsy Baker, and Teresa Tilly. Alright, Taylor, so we already established what the fuck is your initial reaction to Evil Dead, but based on the limited knowledge you had of it, is it what you were expecting?
No.
No?
No. Like, you gave me a very brief description. You were like, it's pretty much the original trope, but better. And I was like, okay. And then you were like, and it has a very low budget. And I was like, oh, so it's going to be really bad.
Yeah. So did you end up enjoying it more or less than you thought you would?
Way more. Way
Yeah.
more. Way more.
Because despite, like, again, Evil Dead is one of those films that because it has Sam Raimi working on it, and, like, he's super creative even with a low budget, it really does transcend a lot of the problems that the film has, which there are many of. As a film I absolutely adore, there are a lot of issues with this movie, but we're going to get to that at the tail end of this video. So, Taylor, first off, why don't you just tell me one thing that you really enjoyed out of the movie?
Definitely the actor's dedication to this, because
Fair.
I would have been pissed off with most of the things that happen if I were an actress in this. Oh, I would have been really pissed.
Yeah, that is absolutely fair. It's obviously in this movie they use what are called fake shimps for a fair bit of stuff towards the end of the movie where people are in their full demon makeup. But it is worth mentioning that there are good portions of that are the original cast and crew as well. And yes, their dedication is unparalleled for a bunch of people who really had no reason to commit as hard as they do to this movie. So props goes out to all of them, having to have those huge contacts that made them blind in their eyes. I made sure that we watched the behind the scenes and the making of this before we did the video. That way Taylor had an idea of everything that went into making this movie. And yeah, these actors definitely deserve high marks for the shit they put up with. As an actor who's done a lot of low-budget horror films, fuck that shit. If someone asked me to do some of the things these actors were asked to do, I would walk off the fucking set.
Yeah.
But they all signed contracts, and they were committed, and they did it, and now we have a cult classic. So, it's really hard for me just to pick something that I like. Because again, as I was just saying off camera, this is a movie that I've lived with and loved for 20 years. So finding stuff in it that I really love, like the things that I think are the best things in it, are really difficult. So real quick, I'm just going to go through a couple of real fast things, and then I'll let you go ahead and chime in with something else that you really enjoyed. So we did talk about the casting briefly, but I have to say that like the choice in this movie to go with Ash as the main character, and again, not the main character from the start. It is very much an ensemble group that he like emerges from, and with all the most like classic and iconic horror heroes or even sci-fi heroes, that's usually the case, whether it be like Ripley in Alien or MacReady in The Thing. Like, that's typically the way it goes. And for them, at the time this movie came out, to make that choice was really bold, because at that time, while there weren't necessarily a lot of really strong female characters in horror movies, the leads of most horror movies ended up being one girl, you know, the final girl being chased by the killer or the monster or the evil or whatever. So by doing that, they really distinguish themselves, and also they make a male, like, hero for the movie who's nothing like any other hero. Like, he's not like he will become in later movies where he's like lots of bravado and like he's an ass-kicking dude. Like, he's just a regular guy who's trying to keep his shit together and doing the best he can and failing most of the time. So like when he comes out of it, there's definitely a sense of relief. Like, he's not the character who you expect to survive in this movie. So that's really fantastic. On top of that, like, again, just the ingenuity that these guys had going into this. There are times when you're watching behind the scenes footage where like you'll see stuff that they're doing where they've got the smoke machine going, but then there are other times in the behind the scenes footage where you'll literally see all the guys on set smoking cigarettes when some of those guys didn't smoke, and it's because they just didn't have enough money to keep the smoke machines going, or they'd ran out of the stuff that goes in the smoke machine, so it's literally just a room full of guys smoking cigarettes and going you know, to get things looking smoky. And just everything they did, like, we're going to talk about the shots here in a minute, but, like, man, the inventiveness with the makeup and with the sound design of the film and just everything that they just did that, it's, like, perfectly embodies the kind of indie film spirit, where it's like, what the fuck do we have? This is what we have. All right, we'll use that to make a movie. Oh, shit, that wasn't enough? We'll figure it out. And in the process of doing that, I say all the time, like, filmmaking is just artistic problem solving in action. And this movie is a testament to that, where if you have a strong idea and you have creative enough people making those ideas, in the end you're going to end up with something that is entertaining, even if it's not something that might be held up as like a pinnacle of the cinematic arts. But even, you know, 30, 40 years after it's made, Evil Dead is still extremely compelling and enjoyable to people who have never seen it before, who were born way after it was ever even thought of. So, yeah, Evil Dead's fucking awesome. That's kind of my favorite thing. So, Taylor, what was something else you really enjoyed in the movie?
I really enjoyed the ending of it, because it's very startling. Like, you think, oh, the movie's done with, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like he gets attacked and you're just like, shit, okay, whoa.
Yeah, and it kind of came up when we were watching the movie. Within the movie, the characters establish that they feel like if they just wait till morning, everything will be fine. And you kind of forget that when you watch the movie for the first time, because, like, you're very much in it with them. Even though we've seen at the beginning of the movie the Force, as they call it, like the POV of the evil out during the day. So by the time you get to the end of the movie and you've had these characters just hammering it home of, like, we just gotta make it till morning. And that's the typical horror movie thing, is, like, if you make it till morning, you're good. But in this movie, no. And they just bring that same shot back, and yeah, it's great. The ending of the movie's fantastic. It's a perfect lead-in to the sequel, because I haven't spoiled too much about the sequel for her, but I have told her that the next movie begins literally where that shot ends. It's fantastic. And just, like, it starts off so creepy like all of the others, but then as it starts getting towards the closer to the door and it starts picking up momentum and you see like the doors just flying open and then the front door like split, like it's really hard hitting. And it really leaves the movie ending off with a great impact. So yeah, like, it's one of my favorite endings of any horror movie ever, and maybe any movie ever in general. Like, it's just a fantastic ending, and Bruce Campbell's reaction as the camera gets right up in his face, just like the, Wah! Like, it's that classic, amazing Bruce Campbell scream. Because throughout this franchise, you will find that Bruce Campbell has screamed every way that a human being can possibly scream. If there's a way to scream, he figured it out. There's a moment in the next movie where Sam's like, all right, Bruce, you scream for a man, like a man for so much of this movie. Now give me one where you scream like a woman. And he makes it work. It's great. So yeah, it's a great shot and definitely one of the better things about this movie. Absolutely. Especially in terms of like making it memorable and like leaving a mark for like people who are like, oh dude, that was crazy, because the ending of a movie is so important, which is why so many horror movies try to leave you off with like that last like jump scare so that you go out of the theater like, oh my god. But normally in most movies that's like it's because their ending sucks and they have to spice it up. The ending to this movie is perfectly good, and if he had walked out and we got a happy ending, that would have been great. But just another thing that this movie kind of innovates, this isn't a happy ending kind of movie. You know, it's awesome. And that actually kind of takes me nicely into the final thing I want to talk about with this movie. Is it's a Sam Raimi movie, so the shots and the cinematography in the movie are insanity.
Yeah.
And that is what makes this movie so fantastic. From the opening shot to the closing shot, there are things that Sam Raimi does in this movie that you had never seen in a movie when it came out, and some of it you still have not seen in movies. Like, there are other movies that have kind of replicated the feel, but there are some things that just aren't done. I've had a lot of people, like, ask, like, in the beginning, where they're doing that shot of the camera, like, going over the water with, like, no budget, how did they do that? And it's like, they literally hooked the camera to a board and put a guy out in a raft, and then had two guys behind the raft slowly pushing him so that it wouldn't make ripples, and then they slightly overcranked the camera so that it looked a little bit faster than it was, and then once they got up to like on land, they started cranking normally so they could actually move. Like, it's everything they did. There's like the shot where the camera burst through the window, where literally they just built a metal T and hooked the camera to it and shoved it through a window at an actress, you know. There's the roller skate shot that I was telling you about, where they essentially just sat the camera down on a roller skate and like slowly scoot it across the floor during one scene. And it's great because you're down on the floor and you can see into the freaking cellar and stuff, and her face is there. It's a really great shot, but it's like all these things that are very, you would assume that to get those kind of shots you would need like thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of equipment to do all these like crazy intricate things. But no, it was just a bunch of dudes like going like, okay, well, we've got these 3 different camera sizes. What can we do to make these shots interesting and different than anything we've ever seen in a movie before? Can we use this one lens on this kind of less good camera to make it look just weird enough that we can then squeeze it above the freaking boards on the roof and go by so that like it just looks weird and creepy? Because if you were to use that camera to shoot a normal scene, it would look like bullshit. But because you're doing something weird, it works. Like, it was just these guys taking very little that they had and figuring out the most interesting way to do each shot in the movie that they could. And then other times it was just like, fuck it, we just gotta shoot it. Just fucking shoot the thing. Point the fucking camera. And there are definitely some scenes in the movie that are like that, but where it matters, the shots really count.
Oh, yeah.
Was there a specific shot that you really, or like a crazy shot somewhere in the movie that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, actually, it was.
Other than the closing shot, which we already established.
Yeah, yeah. It was when what was it was the shot where they had to like angle it on her ankle when they were stabbing it, and they had to like they just had to keep it still, and like I guess the way they angled it, it was like weird. It's
the angle and the lighting and the lens that they're using. Yeah. There's a similar shot where it's not like as graphic, but there's a shot later on where it's a low angle shot of Ash standing in the living room of the cabin, and they use that same kind of like weird anamorphic lens on it so that it like really flattens and stretches everything out, and like it makes you just like you just look at it and like you can't tell what's wrong with it other than the fact that it's like at a Dutch angle, but it just feels like you feel crushed and like compressed the same way that the film is. And again, it's just little things like that like, you know, Sam Raimi spent years making Super 8 films in his backyard and doing like a few other little short films when he was in college and stuff like that. So like, you just imagine that these are all these things that he probably discovered by accident when working on all these other films, because so many things from this period, even like when we go back and look at like old school synthesizers and like stuff David Bowie was doing with synthesizers at this time, a lot of that wasn't what the machine was made to do. It was just figuring out quirks to it and then like going, oh, but if we do this and this and this, we can make this sound. Well, what is that sound? I don't fucking know, but it's goddamn cool. And that's kind of the same thing with this, where there are shots in this movie where you're like, what the fuck is that? I don't know, but it's fucking dope, and I love it. And like, it really set the benchmark for like what a Sam Raimi movie looks like forever, to the point that like, even in the Spider-Man movies, when you watch his Spider-Man movies, now Spider-Man 2 has a straight up Evil Dead scene in it, where it's like Otto Octavius is they're trying to take like the octopus limbs off of his back, and like that scene is just straight up an Evil Dead scene. It's shot like an Evil Dead scene, it's scored like an Evil Dead scene, it's a fucking Evil Dead scene. But even in the first movie, there are a lot of those like typical Sam Raimi shots where you're like, yeah, only Sam Raimi. Like, you can look at any movie this fucker has made and be like, yep, if you've seen Evil Dead, any movie he's made, you can look at and be like, yeah, that's Sam Raimi made this movie. Yeah. So yeah, the shot work in this movie is just absolutely brilliant. And as I said, like, it, along with all the other, like, really fantastic things in the movie, really make up for the many flaws that this movie has as a film by a first-time filmmaker. I mean, as I've said multiple times, every movie has problems. And if it's your first movie, there's going to be a fuckload of problems. So Taylor, why don't we talk about some of the problems? Problems. Now, I do want to state going into this that yes, this film has a lot of problems, and we're going to be mentioning them. This isn't us attacking the film by any stretch. It's us acknowledging the shortcomings of the film, if anything. Because again, this is a film that I've loved for 20 years and that Taylor very much enjoyed. So, having said that, I'm going to go out and say what everyone knows, the most obvious thing, the biggest problem in this movie is the continuity. Because the continuity in this movie is completely fucked. Like, obviously there was no one working on the continuity, but like, even in like the opening shots in the car, sometimes they've got moonshine in their hand, sometimes they don't have moonshine in the hand. They pass the guys on the road and they were waving and the window to the car is up, and the next shot the window's down, no one ever put the window down. Ash sometimes has a unibrow, sometimes Ash doesn't have a fucking unibrow. Like, everything, and there's not if you take two things in this movie that happen next to each other, if there's a cut in between and you look at those two things, there's going to be something wrong with it. The continuity on every level in this movie, the closest it comes is that they got most of the wardrobe consistent for the characters throughout the film. They even kept the scene where Ash has trouble putting his jacket on, and it stays in the movie just because he has his jacket on in the next scene, and they didn't want to fuck that up. But yeah, there's a scene in the movie where, like, the whole time when Cheryl's trying to get Ash to leave, like, the whole time he's walking her to the door, he's trying to put his coat on, and he can't get his coat on, and eventually they cut, and it saves his ass. But yeah, when he comes out the other side of the door, the coat's just on. So yeah, the continuity in this movie's fucking atrocious. So Taylor, what was something that you noticed that was less than perfect about this movie?
That the prosthetics were so not real, it kind of made me laugh throughout the whole thing. Like, I was literally looking at it, and anytime something was stabbing or, like, axed up or whatever, I just started busting out laughing because it was so fake. Like, they did a really good job.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. They didn't have anything, but they did a really good job. I was laughing so hard.
Having said that, there were a couple of effects that got to you, though.
Oh, yeah.
The ankle thing, when she gets stabbed in the ankle, that one. And again, that is an effect that when you look at it real close, especially in HD, you can see a little bit of the rubber of the leg move.
Yeah.
But it's such a visceral thing, because we've all, like, bumped our ankle before, you know, or hurt our ankle, so it's so visceral. The other one that I think got you is whenever Home Chick starts chewing off her own hand.
Yeah, that...
which, like, again, I think that effect is really good. Unfortunately, the effect for her face right there is kind of weird. So again, like, her face has been in the fire. I don't know, the face is weird, but I think with that one, really, it's just that, like, the whole concept of it is such a horrific idea where she's, like, acting like a wolf who's got her foot caught in something, but it's not caught, it's just cut. Like, it's madness incarnate. So that, I think that's why that one really works. But in fairness, yes, there are a lot of effects in this movie that don't look great. And some of the ones that don't look great are still really effective in the movie as it is. And then there are other ones, like whenever Chick gets shot outside the door and you literally see the tube going up to the hole and the blood's not coming out of the hole. It's like running down inside the makeup and coming out of like down here. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of makeup problems. And again, for a movie that had one makeup guy who had no idea what the hell he was doing, and they just had poor Bruce Campbell with a little coffee pot putting people's freaking contacts in, it's pretty solid. But yes, it is an issue, definitely. As for me, I did the obvious one. I'm actually going to go with the one thing in this movie that legitimately bothers me. The one thing in the entirety of this movie that, like, when I watch the movie, it fucking hurts. And that is that, in this first installment of the film, it is not the Deadites, the possessed people, the woods, or, like, you know, the evil in general that is the biggest adversary of Ash Williams. It's fucking shelves! He battles shelves throughout this entire fucking movie. And every time the flimsiest shelf made of 2x4s and particle board falls on him, he acts like he is fucking trapped underneath the frickin' pillars of the Colosseum. And it's just like, you see him so hard, like he is acting his fucking heart out. It's the scene from Spider-Man Homecoming where he's trapped under all the machinery, except it's just a fucking little shelf. It's like, you know what? The reason why Ash does so much better in the subsequent movies and TV shows is because he doesn't have to contend with any fucking shelves. That is my biggest problem. I'm going to put the images up on the screen right here. God bless Bruce Campbell's, like, 18, 19-year-old acting ass. He is doing everything he can to sell to you that he can't get out from underneath those fucking shelves. Fuck. It's horrible. It is so bad. And every time I watch the movie, it's the one time, especially when I'm watching it with someone new like you, when I get to that point, I'm just like, fuck, here comes the goddamn shelf, man. Fucking shelves. And you just know that when they were writing it, you know, and putting it together, and they're like, well, how are we going to explain why, like, his character doesn't jump in and help him? Bruce's like, I'll be trapped under the shelf. And everyone's just like, really? You're going to be trapped under the shelf? Yeah, oh yeah, don't worry, it's good, I can sell it. Or it's either that or it's Sam. He's like, you suck. Get under the shelf. You're stuck under the shelf. I don't know which one it was. All I know is, like, in a movie full of great ideas that sometimes have some problems with execution because of money and experience, that was the worst fucking idea outside of the other thing that I legitimately don't like in this movie, which is the fucking magnifying glass prop. It's stupid. It looks bad. She would have dumped his sorry ass. And it was originally in the movie because they had a gag they wanted to do where he was going to burn the Necronomicon with, like, the sunlight through the magnifying glass. And I can't remember if that just didn't work out or if they realized it was stupid. So now he, like, uses it as, like, a fishing pole to grab the Necronomicon. It's like, in a brilliant movie full of brilliant ideas, those two things, you're like, oh yeah, this movie's made by, like, a fucking 21-year-old kid. Fuck. Yeah. So, those are really the only two things in this whole movie that really bother me. So Taylor, was there actually something in the movie that wasn't just like, oh, that's not perfect and it's kind of silly, but was there anything that actually legitimately bothered you?
The opening sequence to the whole movie, like, it was brilliantly shot and everything, but it just hurt my head.
Oh, that's fair. Like a motion sickness almost type thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's no, like, character in the scene to, like, anchor your vision or anything. Like, in most of the other shots, there's, like... But in this one also, we're moving, like, over water, and there's, like, mist that's moving and everything. Like, it's an amazing shot, but I can definitely see how, like, some people would be like, oh, whoa, what the hell? And I even think that, like, that's probably what he was going for, is, like, just wanting to be like, yeah, this whole movie's gonna be weird and unfucking easy, so here you go. Because they do say that, like, as a horror filmmaker, you should with your opening shot of the movie, you should be telling people what movie they're watching. And in this movie, it absolutely fucking does that with that shot. But, as I said, I can definitely see how some people would have issue with that. But again, yeah, I do think that it's part, because again, we bookend with a similar shot, just like, so yeah, I think that, like, structurally speaking, it really works, and I think it's a very well executed shot, but I can definitely understand how it might be unsettling in a very real way, not just to like, oh, that sucks. It's not that it sucks, it's just like, my stomach doesn't like that, fuck you.
My stomach and my eyes and oh.
All of this.
Yeah, no.
My brain's like, that's cool, the rest of me is like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Which, as we said, is kind of most people's first response to watching this movie. What the fuck was that? That was fucking awesome! There you have it, children of the screen. The quintessential, the cult classic Sam Raimi's Evil Dead. As we said, we both really enjoyed this film, but here's the question, Taylor. Would you recommend it for Halloween viewing this season?
Would I recommend it? Hell yeah!
Absolutely, and so would I. As I said, I would recommend this thing to my grandmother. She might not ever speak to me again, but I'd recommend it to her, goddammit, because everyone should fucking watch Evil Dead at least once. It is that movie. So, if you haven't seen Evil Dead, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Go check it out. And if you have seen Evil Dead, let me know down in the comments below. What was the first time you saw it? What were the circumstances? For me, it was on an old VHS tape in black and white, which scared the living shit out of me when I was 10. I'd like to know your story about it right down there. So anyway, guys, until next time, thank you very much. I hope y'all have a good one. Nerd Scum, out.
Bye.